This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
So I don't know if any of you guys were expecting what happened with the Kemper thing, but I've seen a few opinions on it, and I kind of wanted to do a video reflecting on it, and I kind of guess ask and look at what might be a little bit disappointing to people, about what people are expecting, and I guess what people might be expecting of a device which comes out in 2025. Are there certain things that should just be expected now, or is it okay? Well, of course it's okay, but is it the best move for a company to do something like this, I guess, in 2025? So I think for me, they called it a Kemper Mk2. Now, I guess the reason that you call it Mk2 is because it's a bit of an incremental improvement. And when you look at these things side by side, so if you kind of look, I saw on Facebook today that there was a post that saying someone was like, newbie here, I'm assuming the top is the new version. I think that's a little bit of a, like I think you'd want it to be very clear in terms of selling more of these, that the newer version is improved in some way. And I think some of this is down to marketing and aspects, you know, like clearly differentiating a product. I think it's kind of brave that Kemper have done this in this way, because it's like, look, it kind of is what it is. It's not providing, I think, enough reasons that someone who's been using a Kemper for all of these years would go, absolutely, this is exactly what I needed, I'm going to jump straight on the Mk2. And it's also not doing anything particularly different from what Mk1 was doing that is going to get people back from, say, the Quad Cortex, who I think quite a lot of Kemper users jumped over to Quad Cortex, or, you know, whether folks like Helix, people that have jumped into these other sides and the competition to the Kemper, whether they're coming back. Now, I don't get the sense that Kemper are particularly that worried in some cases about this. For some reason, it seems like they're kind of just happy doing their own thing. Number one, making a device which more or less has the same functionality mostly. What they have increased is the power in terms of boot time. So it now takes 20 seconds to load up the Kemper instead of it was getting quite slow. I've had Kempers in the past and it would sometimes take a long while. And if you had more rigs on there, it would take even longer. And they've added more extra effects blocks and some different effects types. I think that's what it is. So you can have up to 20 simultaneous effects. This is kind of, I think, going to help some people that are really at the edge of what might be needed. But the Kemper's been out since, 2011, successfully used on tours and stages all over the world. I'm not sure that was necessarily what, I guess Kemper must have been speaking to some of these guys and asking, what is it that you might need? So someone out there maybe really wanted some extra effects, but I think the Kemper has been pretty capable for years, like more than an HX Stomp, right? You can load way more than that. More than most of the competition, in one kind of thing at that price range. I mean, a Quad Cortex at this point, probably you would do a little bit more, but not loads more. And the other thing that Kemper has going on is that you've got the seamless switching or spillover blocks, right? So if you've got a delay and reverb in those specific points, you'd have spillover between stuff. So that seems to be answering a question that people didn't really have. Now, aside from the smear campaign that NeuroDSP kind of ran around launch about how much better the captures were than the Kemper profiles, again, I think a lot of people had some really positive things to say about the Kemper. And even still in 2025, you'll see a lot of people say, well, actually, this to me, it feels a bit more like my amps. There's now even more accurate profiles, apparently, I think related somewhat to the speaker. I'll check the manual for this. But again, this is one of those things where actually the Kemper for all of these years has been pretty good, except for in like the edge cases of I guess, really heavy profiles is where people would notice some things more than others. So, you know, if you're profiling Soldano. The area for me, which has always been a little bit of a grey area, which I think Kemper could have maybe helped out with a bit here, is the actual profiling process itself is still a little bit of a mystery. And it's not that clear from the manuals or from anything, except for a couple of people like making videos on how they refine, like how Kemper actually really expect you to use the profiling process to get better results. So, you know, it just says play a few chords in your Kemper profiling refinement section. I think that's an area where they could have improved things over time. They've made loads of other improvements and bringing on like the mobile capability and the capability to use a tablet to edit stuff, and maybe that's why they don't need to worry about this. But this is the one massive thing, which is that if you like check on Reddit and stuff like that, people are kind of like, why were you still using the Game Boy screen? And I've seen conflicting opinions on this. Like, one opinion is that, well, it's been road tested for a decade, why would you move away from a winning formula? And I think the point really is that almost every other device out there is going to be using a color screen. Now, does that really matter? I guess when you're actually in the heat of battle playing, no. So maybe they're onto something here. Like, does everything have to have a touch screen? Does it all have to be like colorful? Does it all have to be, you know, going towards the Fender Tone Master thing, where it's like pretty skeuomorphic, these kind of things? One other thing I read a lot is that people say, well, actually, in actual other industries, you move away from skeuomorphic design because actually you realise that it's not the quickest way or most efficient way to do things in the digital realm. And I definitely experienced that in the Tone Master Pro, where it's like, actually, how do I edit this delay efficiently when I'm trying to like move a virtual knob? Like, got a bit difficult. So I think it's one of those things where, like, my first instinct is like it's a little bit of a missed opportunity, and then you think, actually, like, Kemper's a guy who's designing this stuff, like, maybe he just does know better. Whether the gear buying public actually agree with him or not, I guess, is the other thing. But yeah, it's kind of a little bit, you have to think about it, and then you think, right, well, if I was actually gigging a thing, the Kemper Remote still in 2025, I think, is one of the best actual gigging experiences. I think something with scribble strips does supersede it. So like the Fractal FM9 or the Helix or the Tone Master Pro, in terms of actually on the floor gigging, I think those are my favourite experiences where you've got scribble strips above the thing. That to me feels best when gigging. But the Kemper is a pretty close second to that, I think. And one real missed opportunity for me that I'd have liked to see would be the loading of dual profiles. Because if you've got extra power, that to me is the one thing that if they brought that to the Kemper, might have made me interested again, because it's kind of like, actually, that's an aspect that I really, really do think could change the game for Kemper users, loading two profiles at the same time to get these kind of more, something you could do in most other units, right? Loading two amp profiles, or in Quad Cortex amp models, in Axe Effects, you can load two, Fractal FM9, Helix, you can load loads, Quad Cortex, you can load loads. It's one of those things where I think they're kind of just missing out a little bit on that aspect, and that is one small change that Kemper could make that I think would make a big difference, in my mind at least. I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Were you disappointed by this? And again, older Kemper owners, as in people that have been on the Kemper train for a while, I think have been slightly disappointed that they're going to be maybe now second tier, like not getting some of the improvements that the Mark II cats are getting, which is understandable. And, you know, it's this classic thing with tech where it's like, well, this announcement comes and suddenly my piece of gear, like the second-hand resale value of it is going to be not as good. But Kemper's actually held their value quite well over time, so maybe that won't change. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Were you disappointed by it? I just thought it was an interesting one. Like, does everything have to be going towards this pretty, all colourful design, or can we have these kind of more retro-ish pieces of gear that just do the job well? Love to know your thoughts. Will you be buying a Kemper Mark II? Cheers for stopping by.